की वजह से कम लोग आए हैं. Happy Holi. Does it feel weird that you are here in Holi studying in the class, or is it something which is normal with you guys? It's definitely very weird for me. I mean, we are used to having a holiday today, and I used to run away from Delhi during this time because Delhi is really brutal with Holi. So that is how. So how have you been? How are you all? All good? So ready for your first technical session on geography? Any expectations before we begin? Anything that you would want to say? You have something in mind to say or things like that? Chal. So today we are going to begin with something very fundamental. Okay? Geography actually is a study of the earth. But before we study the earth, we need to understand how the earth came into being. So that is why a precursor to geography is the formation of earth. And the formation of earth is a small episode in the Big Bang theory. Not the season Big Bang theory, but yes, the Big Bang theory, which is actually the theory used to describe the origin and evolution of universe. So the first thing today that we are going to read about is universe. We will be talking about certain fundamental terms. We will be looking into some questions that have come in the recent past from this particular chapter. Okay, and then once you have the basic terminology in your mind, then we will be moving on to the next part, and that is basically going to be the origin and evolution of universe. So there are certain theories that we need to study. I told you that geography basically gives you the final outcome. Now it is upon you to trace a path back, how exactly anything began. So in order to do that, we theorize, we give certain postulates, okay? We give certain theories that this might have happened. And in order to understand, or in order to bring credibility to your theory, you will have to provide it with arguments or examples or evidences. Okay? So based upon that, every theory will be having certain good advantages, certain merits, certain failures, or you can say criticisms, that it was not able to do this. Okay, and every such theory will be having such things. But yes, based upon the evidences that we have, we will basically be seeing that there has to be some amount of you can say correlation with some theory which is till now not disproved. Okay, so that is what we will be doing tomorrow. Today our analysis begins with the basic components of the universe. Okay, so there will be two videos also that I'll be showing you. One of them is to explain the effect of gravity. The other one is basically about galaxies. Okay, we'll be looking into that as well. But before that, let us begin with this particular picture. Is this picture visible to everyone, or you need some of the lights off? Is it visible? Yeah. So this particular picture actually is of a dark sky reserve. So what I exactly want to portray is darkness. Okay. Now you all travel through Bangalore to come here. Okay. So whenever you are traveling through Bangalore during this time of evening or after sunset, the first thing that any one of us is going to require is illumination. We are very used to light. Okay. Throughout the day, you do not use your headlamps, you do not use torches, you do not use street lamps. But as soon as the sun sets, okay, so in that particular scenario, what happens? You will need lighting because we do not have the eyes to look in the dark, except in Counter Strike where you have night vision glasses and all, or you are a seal or some kind of that. Okay, so you will not require, you do not have night vision like owls. So now what we do, we want artificial lighting. But it is only humans who have come up with this need to wake up in the night as well. It is only humans who have a night life as well as a day life. There are animals who either function in the day, just like birds. Okay, the birds start chirping somewhere around 3 a.m. or 3:30 a.m. and they will chirp till the sunset. After that, it's a distress call. Okay, but there are certain other animals who basically are known to prowl in the night. All the prey animals, you can be talking about bats, you can be talking about owls. So they are the ones who are active in the night. Why? Because at that particular time their vision comes to senses. During the day it is dark for them, during the night it is dark for us. So what exactly needs to be done if we want to utilize both the sunlit part and the dark part? We will need some source of light. This source of light actually came with the discovery of fire. Okay, so humans, we say that one of the earliest discoveries of the humans was fire. The accident of fire which the cavemen, as it is said, discovered. Okay, due to the striking of two stones and the friction produced a spark. Okay, so what basically happens when this fire was discovered? So fire had two qualities for humans. One, it provided warmth, because when you go back to the cave times or very old times, they were not used to Gucci and Prada. They basically were used to only leaves, maybe some amount of skin hides of the other dead animals. Okay, no Levi's, no Armani, nothing. It is today's things. But the point is, in that time, in the night, you would still feel cold. Okay, you had more amount of forests, so the temperatures were low. You would need some amount of comfort. That comfort came from fire. The second thing, it gave illumination in the night. Okay, so that illumination was the center of community building. Okay, because of that illumination, we all as humans have one tendency. That tendency is to follow light. So whenever any particular, let us say, expeditioner, do you know that people go to Antarctica or Arctic for their expeditions as tourists as well, not just as scientists? So what happens is that sometimes in your expedition you get lost due to a blizzard. Blizzard is a very violent storm that comes. Just like we have dust storms here, blizzards are there in the frozen parts of the world. So what happens is that in this blizzard time, the visibility becomes completely hazy. Your orientation is going to be completely lost. And because it is extremely cold, it becomes very difficult to actually have control over your senses. So people get lost. And when people get lost, what they do is they follow the sun. That is why you have a word, and that word is basically known as orient. You had your orientation class 2 days back. So that is for you to align your focus towards a particular direction. But orient actually comes from the side from which sun rises. Okay, so that is why countries like India, Japan, China, Vietnam, Cambodia, all the countries which lie to the east of United Kingdom is basically called as oriental countries, because in the past it was the only source of true thing that the sun always rises from the east and it always sets in the west. So in the past our maps were made based upon this. In the direction from which the sun is going to rise, whatever is that in that direction, that will be called as oriental. Okay, so this is something that you are also going to see with respect to history. When you will be reading modern history, when we talk about the British Empire in India, that time also you are going to read about this particular term as orientalist. Okay, or oriental economies, oriental cultures. That basically means the eastern cultures with respect to the British Empire, that is United Kingdom today. Okay, understood? So what basically happened is that because of this, the humans have a tendency to follow the sun, and that is why most of the rescue efforts in these Arctic and Antarctic regions are directed towards the direction of the sun. Okay, and in that direction only most of these lost, you can say, expeditioners, they are actually found. Now they are living or dead is a different story, but they are found in that particular manner. Okay, so this is something which is a primal instinct of humans for survival, that for survival we would need light. We cannot survive in dark. Okay, for that matter we will need warmth. We are not people who have self-warming characteristics. We are warm-blooded animals. Okay, warm-blooded animals basically mean that we are not able to regulate our body temperature based upon the outside temperature. So we are warm-blooded animals. Okay, so that is why what happens, this fire served us a purpose. Okay, and the third purpose that fire serves us is basically it could scare, because it had the tendency to burn. Whenever someone would touch fire, they would feel extremely hot and it will hurt. So if it is hurting humans, it will hurt animals as well. and that is exactly why fire was used to scare away the animals. Okay, eventually we started making tandoors, that's a different thing, purely different thing. But yes, that discovery lies there. Okay, so from that point onwards, we have always been in a quest that we have to have illumination if we want to function in the dark. And gradually, we come to the point that we have lights after the discovery of electricity and with the way that electricity was being produced. Okay, so gradually you see that illumination was done using lamps. Before that, we used oil lamps. Okay, you might have if you have old stuff in your home, you would find that there are some kerosene lamps as well, which was used in the older times. Whenever they were even today, wherever the power supply is unreliable, you would still find those lamps. Okay, the one which used to burn with kerosene. Okay, so these are basically the way in which we were trying to function during the night. Now that is something which has become a part of the city life. So in the cities, we have swanky buildings, we have very brilliant illumination everywhere. But the point is that this illumination, which is provided by electricity as today, is something which is unnatural. It is not something which is there in the nature during the dark time. So what happens is that this is something which disturbs all the other animals. Okay, and hence this is something which is known as light pollution. Okay, so light pollution basically is the use of either excess or less than what is required light to supplement the natural illumination that is given by the nature. Okay, so with respect to cities, we have excess light pollution. You might have seen that when you stand at the terrace or the balcony of your home, okay, and sometimes if there is any kind of event that is usually a wedding that goes on, you would find very sharp laser beams. They are actually, you can say, projected into the sky, as you can say, for dance floors and things. They are actually sources of light pollution. Okay, and because of this, what happens when you have a lot of light in your surrounding, the things above your head, that is the sky, becomes less and less illuminated. Okay, so that is why whenever you see that whenever the lights shut off, so for the first few minutes you feel dark, but then eventually your eyes adapt to it, and then you start very weakly seeing the objects in front of you. Okay, usually it is not pitch black for us, so that is the natural lighting. Okay, so what happens is that if the you can say the ambient lighting is gone, only then you will be able to observe what is dark. And such places on the earth are actually known as dark sky reserve. So these are the places where you would find minimal amount of artificial lighting. Okay, and what happens because of this minimal amount of artificial lighting? The sky becomes illuminated. And when the sky becomes illuminated, this is the point where you can observe what is there in the sky unhindered. Okay, so these places could be privately owned, these could be publicly owned as well. Okay, but here what do you find? Largely that only the required amount of illumination, those are the only things which are used. This illumination does not disturb the larger sky. But at the same time, you are also seeing at the distance, this is basically where the city is. You can see the difference between the two. That is light pollution. Okay, and you will be shocked to know that is 30 miles from this place. 30 miles. So you can see that light 30 miles away. Okay, so this is a place which is known as a dark sky reserve. Now let me name this place. So you have understood what is a dark sky reserve? What exactly is a dark sky reserve? You understood the characteristic. Now this place is actually called Paranal Observatory. Okay, this is basically located in Chile. You know Chile as a country? This is basically a place in South America. Okay, on the west coast of South America, you have a country called Chile. Its capital is Santiago. Okay, so Chile is basically that country where this particular observatory is located. Okay. Now the point being, how many of you have seen Paranormal Activities or have heard about Paranormal Activities as a movie? That is named after this particular observatory, because this particular region is notorious for paranormal activities. Some things which are supernatural, some things which are ghostly, that usually comes from this. Okay. So see how much you guys literally are not seeing anything. I don't know what kind of series and movies you are looking at, but you're not looking at the right things. Okay. So when you talk about paranormal observatory, so what happens once the surroundings get dark? This illuminates. Okay. So what can we characterize about a dark sky reserve? We can characterize two things as of now. Minimal amount of artificial lighting, that's the first thing. The second thing, you would require clear skies. If the skies have cloud, you will not be able to see this. We are not able to see the moon. How will we see this? Right? So there are two things which become very important: clear skies and minimal amount of artificial lighting. Now this is something which is at most possible in forests, deserts, okay, very cold places where population does not live. So that is why these are the places where we set up such observatories. Okay. So what we have seen, that the first characteristic is absence or minimal presence of artificial lighting. Now the next thing you have is clear skies. So any place on the earth which preserves these two characteristics will be called as a dark sky reserve. Okay. Now this particular place could be public or private, it doesn't matter. If this characteristic is something which is actually you can say preserved over a large piece of land, it will be called as a dark sky reserve. But why will it be called as a dark sky reserve? Because you will have to go for a certification. Okay. So there is an international organization with the name Dark Sky International. So this is basically an organization. This organization is actually the one which certifies various regions as dark sky reserves, dark sky parks. Okay. They are very important for astronomical observations. Okay. So this institution gives you that tag. So the first such you can say dark sky was certified in 2007. World's first was certified in 2015, and India has a dark sky reserve since 2022. Okay. So if you have written this down, I would like to clear the you have written it down? See, you would be finding a lot of I don't usually give a very structured kind of note. I write things randomly, but the point is that I would want you to listen very carefully to what I'm saying. Okay, because I want your focus on what I'm saying. You can watch this video later or you can take down your notes later. It doesn't matter. If as long as you are able to understand this, it is with you, and that is what I want to do. Okay. So this is understood by everyone. Shall I remove this? Okay. So now when we talk about it, why is this something which is important? Now you would be shocked to know that this particular part of the sky that you see, this is actually a part of our own galaxy, Milky Way. This is how Milky Way looks from the earth, from those places which are dark. Okay. So where do you find dark sky reserves? You can be finding them in the thick of the forests. very cold terrain, so maybe any kind of high altitude mountain, any kind of glacier like structure, you will be finding them in deserts. So this one is basically located in the Atacama Desert. Okay, in Chile, this is basically the Atacama Desert where it is located. Now the point being, in deserts and in extremely frozen places, there is minimal amount of cloud presence. There is minimal amount of wind presence. That winds usually do not blow very fast. Okay, so what happens is that in these places, the night sky observations are something which are very possible. So that is why most of the biggest observatories in the world are actually located in deserts. That could be a hot desert, that could be a cold desert. Just like when you talk about Atacama Desert, this is one of the driest desert in the world, because many regions of this particular desert have not received a single drop of rainfall for the last 400 to 500 years. A single drop of rainfall. This is one of the driest places in the world. Okay, so this is basically a little bit about dark sky reserve. Now with respect to India, what do we find with respect to India? So India's first dark sky reserve, would you want to take a guess where this could be found? Very nice. Do you know the name? Hanley. Hanley Dark Sky Reserve, Ladakh. Okay, its name is Hanley or Hanley, whatever you would want to call. Now the second one, India's first dark sky park. Anyone who would want to take a guess? This is Pench Tiger Reserve. This is in Maharashtra. Okay, so this thing was declared as a dark sky park in 2024. This has been a dark sky reserve since 2022. Okay, so if you ever want to visit this particular place, September to March is the ideal time. Okay, so we just missed the window this year. Next year you may want to go here. Okay, now Pench you can go anytime. As long as you are not encountering with Naxals, you can go anytime. No issues with that. But yes, you will find Naxals. See, this is a big problem in India. We have Naxals operating in the border regions of Maharashtra, Chhattisgarh, parts of Jharkhand, Odisha, Andhra Pradesh, Telangana. We have Naxals there. They are not going to harm you as long as you do not get into Indian police service and going there in a beacon by the car. They are not going to harm you. Okay, if you are going as a civilian, no issues. But once you become an IPS, that becomes a problem. Okay, if you become a paramilitary forces officer or a military forces officer, that becomes a problem. So at that time, be very cautious about your approach. So you will be told this is something which will be there in your training. Don't worry. I'm just giving you, you can say, an introduction to things, because you need to understand what you are stepping into. Okay. Yesterday I was talking about Bastar, or day before yesterday. Yesterday. I'm not trying to scare you, but India's only abduction of a sitting collector happened in Bastar. He was abducted by the Naxals. He was not harmed, but this was a message sent out to the government that either you push back or your collector is gone. Today he is a top negotiator with the Naxals for the government of Chhattisgarh. Okay. He was not handed over to police, he was not handed over to paramilitary, he was handed over to journalists. Okay. And that is the only incident till date which is known of a sitting civil servant being abducted from his office. So at that time they projected their power that this is what we can do. We can pick someone up right from their office. Okay, usually abductions happen from home or when you are walking. They picked him from the office. Don't worry. Since then, nothing has happened. Even that civil servant himself is fine, healthy with a family. Don't worry about it. Okay, but yes, be prepared. That is why it is very important that, ma'am, you were the karate one, right? Yeah, that is something that all of you should learn. See, tactical training is very important. I personally recommend it to everyone, especially the girls. You need to know how to break every bone of the boys. You need to know that. Okay, so keep yourself fit enough, fast enough, smart enough, everyone. Because ultimately, your self-defense will be done by self. So never shy away from tactical arts. There is nothing called, okay, there is violence and I don't like violence. It's okay, no one likes violence. But when it comes to your life and death, I don't think anyone would be non-violent. Okay, so let's drop that principle right there. Violence is not the solution, but defense definitely is a solution. That is why the Japanese have a self-defense force. They do not have an army. When you talk about Japanese, do you know Japan was actually that is the only country in the world to have suffered atomic bomb dropping, Hiroshima and Nagasaki. You know this? So since then, Japan actually made it into their constitution that we are not going to wage war. We will not be the country that will be waging war, and that is why they have named their defense forces as Japanese self-defense forces. If someone attacks us, then we will respond. We are not the first attackers. We'll never be the adversary. Okay, that's a big commitment to make. But that self-defense is really lethal. You talk about the various martial arts that they practice. Really lethal. So yes, you should be taking classes and inspiration from her. You should be doing that. Shooting is good. It's definitely good. You should do it. But at the same time, shooting is something which is long range. Close combat is also something which is very important. So you go for Krav Maga, MMA, mixed martial arts, or for that matter, Taekwondo, that's up to you. Do something. Don't just sit studying for this examination. Okay, you will need some time for yourself. Utilize it well. Okay, chalo. So dark sky. Now what do you see in a dark sky apart from this? Now we want to focus upon. See, this software does not agree with me, so that is why it misbehaves. Where's the CAC engineer here? Is he here? You got to fix this, man. It does not respond well. There's a serious deficit in this software. Find it out, tell me what to do. If you don't want to code, I'll code. Don't worry. Okay. So now we want to focus on the sky. Okay. So when you focus on the sky, what do you see? You can only see twinkling light from small points. They are all together, something which is called as celestial bodies. So celestial body is like a common noun. Do you understand a common noun or a group noun? Girls and boys, these are group nouns. You do not identify a particular individual. Okay, so girls as a group, that's a noun. Boys as a group is a noun. Okay, so there are certain things which are called as common nouns, which represents a group. Humans, taking all the genders together, that is also a common noun. Similarly, celestial body. So celestial body is something which is a common noun. It encompasses everything that you see in the night sky. So your moon is a celestial body, stars are celestial bodies, planets are celestial bodies, even the shooting stars that you know as meteors or meteoroids, all of them come under celestial bodies. So in one line, the definition of a celestial body, whatever is visible in the night sky is a celestial body. Okay, sun is also a celestial body because it is also a star. Okay, so celestial actually comes from the other word heavens. These are all Latin and Greek terms which have been adapted into English. Okay, so that is why celestial bodies are also called as heavenly bodies. Why? Because we assume as humans that when people die, they go to heaven. So heaven is something that you actually characterize with respect to sky. Okay, no one wants to go to the nadir. Nadir is basically what is known as hell, dozakh, whatever you want to call it. Okay, so that is which is hell. So extreme sky is heaven and extreme bottom is hell. Okay, it is said sky is cool, heavens are good, pleasant. Hell is something which is very very hot. Why? Because it is inside earth. No, inside the earth temperatures are very hot. So that is why you say everyone here would be making out of pakoras and all that. Okay, that's the whole point about it. There is nothing of substance in that. This is just philosophical things to scare you off. No one actually knows who goes where. No one knows that. Who knows it? Can you tell me one example that this person definitely went to heaven, that person definitely went to hell? You can't say that about Gandhi, you can't say that about Hitler. No one knows it. These are just psychological constructs. Or if I have to tell you, a CCTV camera whose working is very doubtful. Religion acts like a CCTV camera. That yes, it is there, but you don't know it works or not. Okay, usually when pickpocketing happens, anything wrong happens, CCTV cameras are the ones we look for. And mostly CCTV cameras, though installed, are out of function. So you never really know. Do you really know what happens? No. That is why if you be in my company, you all will become atheist. Okay. Very sorry to say that if I'm hurting your religious beliefs, but the point is, if you can be scientific, you cannot be emotional. Yes, there are things you will not be able to explain. You will not be able to explain why these things don't fall into earth, why earth does not fall into them. There are things you will not be able to explain. But yes, there are things you will be able to explain. So don't take everything at face value. That is what Gautam Buddha also said. That is what the Middle Ages, when you talk about the history. So you have an age of Renaissance, you have an age of enlightenment. These things also say. Listen to everything. Don't take things at face value. Understand why they are being said. Okay, so that's the thing. So anything which is seen on the sky is why called celestial body or a heavenly body. Now some prominent things what you see in the sky are stars. Okay, but why do you think everything? You all must have read this particular term in your physics books, at least in class 10. How many of you remember this particular term? Point source of light. Anytime anything that comes from physics, you talk about X-ray diffraction, for that matter you talk about nuclear radiations, you will be talking about point source of light. What exactly is a point source of light? Something which is very very small, highly illuminated. These are all point sources of light. Okay, someday when you are actually sitting on your terrace, shutting off all the lamps or all the lights, you are just sitting on your terrace with a easy chair, you will still find the light or illumination from the moon falling on your terrace. That is something which is there. It illuminates your path, right? So that is what is called as a point source of light. Either something which is very distant, because something which is very distant will appear as a point, no matter how big that object is. Something which is very close to you, that is something which will become very elaborate to you. That is why it is said magnify, because something which comes to you gradually increases in size. That is what you call as magnification. Do you understand this? So all the things, because they are very far away from us, they look like points. Now this is relatively close. It is something which is more diffuse, it is more magnified. Do you understand these two differences? Now we are going to go into the stars. Okay, so when we talk about stars, what do you know about stars except for the stars that we know in the acting industry? What do you know about the stars? Tell me. I don't really understand what exactly is the issue with this one. Yeah, so what are stars? What do you know about stars? Okay, 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 that is the primary characteristic of a star. And anything else that you would want to add to that? That is the very very fundamental thing, that stars are basically those bodies which will have their own heat and light. True, but apart from that, Anything else that comes to your mind? Physics? Tell me, what do you know? See, I'm not here to test you guys on your educational background, but yes, I do need to know what you know so that I can tell you what I know. So anything else that you know about it? Okay. So the fundamental thing is that stars are basically the celestial objects which have their own heat and light. Okay. Now heat and light is produced only by stars. Okay. So stars are basically energy generators. Okay. Now these objects are massive. They're not small objects. Massive objects. Okay. They have their own way of moving. Okay. They have their own way of motion. And because of their very heavy mass, they have something which is called as very strong gravitational pull. So we'll be talking about gravitation as well, but as of now you have to understand that gravitation is like attraction. Okay, so basically if you find a very you can say beautiful girl or a very handsome man, both of them usually act as points of attraction. Doesn't matter they know anything or not, but yes, everyone will turn their heads to see them at least once. Okay, that is what you know as attraction. Okay, then you have people with aura. Okay, so what exactly is this aura? That is something which people resonate with, that okay, we have similar thoughts, ideas, energies, so you would want to I mean be in their company or things like that. Okay, so these are the ways in which humans interact. Okay, now in the matter of physics you have something called as attractive forces. So attractive forces will try to reduce the distance between two objects. Okay, they will come closer to each other. So when you talk about these things, there are two kinds of attractive forces that we know. One is gravitation, but gravitation is something which becomes significant for very massive objects. There it is something which becomes very significant. For smaller objects there is something known as magnetism. Okay, so you might be knowing about magnets, that we have small magnets, you might have played with those toy magnets and all, or that magnetic chessboard, something you might be knowing. Okay, so these are basically the ones which are actually certain materials that are found in nature, which have the ability to attract certain other materials. Now a magnet is not going to attract this bottle. A magnet will definitely attract something which is made of iron. Okay, so what does this mean? That not all objects are attracted by magnets. Okay, but when you talk about gravity, gravity has no discrimination. It will attract every single thing, and that is the speciality about gravity. It does not repel, it will never push you away, it will always attract towards itself. Okay, so that is why anything which is huge will by default have greater gravity. Is this understood? Okay, so now going to the next part, that what exactly are stars. So stars, as ma'am said, that it is something which is made of you can say it has its own heat and light. Now the point is, stars have a composition of only gas. And what gas? Hydrogen. Okay, so stars are primarily composed of hydrogen. Okay, and it is basically because of a particular nuclear reaction that is known as nuclear fusion. We'll be reading about it in a bit of detail. Okay, this is something which is the source of energy of heat as well as light for stars. Okay, so just like in the, I don't know you guys have heard that ad or not, we did, boost is the secret of my energy. Have you heard that, Sachin Tendulkar saying that? I don't think you guys have seen that ad. You have seen that? You have seen that? Where? It's still there. Huh? Okay, that is what. No? I stopped watching TVs 20 years back, so I'm not very sure it is there on TV. When I used to watch TV, Sachin Tendulkar would definitely say, "Boost is the secret of my energy," and we'll get a free bat with Sachin Tendulkar sign on it. And that was my selling point. Sold. I'm going to switch my loyalty from Cadbury Bonvita to Boost. I did that a lot of number of times, unless I understood that these bats are not good enough, that I have to buy my own bat. Okay, so that kind of thing. So that is how star's source of energy is nuclear fusion. Okay, what it is we'll study. I'll tell you everything blow by blow, don't worry. Okay, so because of this nuclear fusion you have heat and light. So what you can say is that whenever any body has got enormous amount of energy, okay, so that amount of energy is always given out. That is given out in terms of heat and light. Okay, how do you imagine this? Imagine that one of your family members, maybe your roommates, maybe your partners, they are ill. Okay, they have suddenly developed a fever. Okay, so now what happens is that as you approach them, they have high fever, so as you approach them you start feeling that they are warm. Even without touching them you can say that they are warm. Why? Because their temperature is greater than your temperature, and hence you say they have fever. So what does this mean? Any single time you would be having greater amount of energy, you will radiate it off as heat and light. That is what happens with nuclear fusion. So what does this mean? That nuclear fusion generates enormous amount of energy, and that amount of energy is given out as heat and light. Okay, understood? Okay, the next part, the closest star to us is sun. Sun is the ultimate source of heat and energy for the entire earth and the solar system. After sun we have Proxima Centauri. Okay, there is another star, Proxima Centauri. This is the second closest star to earth after sun. Okay, now the point being that you might ask the question that if stars are basically the ones which enormously generate heat and light, so why exactly don't we have a very hot kind of surrounding everywhere? That should be the case, that if you basically have got very high amount of temperature, just like enter a kitchen after your mom has left cooking food, and you will find that the kitchen is very warm. Why? Because that cooker, that vessel in which the food was cooked, that will radiate out the heat, that will warm up the air in the surrounding. Okay, but the point is that why don't you see the overall temperatures rising? The point being that first of all these objects are far away from us. If I have to tell you about sun is 150 million kilometers away from us. 150 million kilometers. Delhi from here is about 2500 kilometers. I reach here in 3 hours. Okay, but this is 150 million kilometers. Okay, our closest neighbor moon is 3,84,000 kilometers away. Okay, so they're far away. First of all, that's the first thing. The second thing, now there is no medium in between them. In order to transmit the energy you would require a medium, except for radiations. Okay, except for radiation, if you want to transmit energy, just like you are able to listen to my voice, that is because we have air in this room. If this air is extracted or this room is filled with water, the loudness is going to change. Okay, if the air is extracted, you will not receive my voice. It will be like I am speaking in mute, okay, in a Zoom call. It will be like that. But because right now you see that there is air inside this particular room, so whatever I am speaking actually is compressing or pushing air out, and that is what is creating sound. Okay, so that is the second thing, that there is no medium in between these celestial objects. So that is why the only way to transmit energy is radiation, and radiation is a very less energy efficient process. Okay, radiation has very less amount of energy that can be received on the other end. Okay, very diffused kind of energy. So that is why it is not able to rise or raise the temperature of the entire universe. Is this understood? Okay, so that is why you see that although these stars are enormous when they are having heat, just like, do you know about this particular experiment, solar Parker probe? Anyone who knows about this? This is an experiment or a mission from NASA. Okay, you know NASA? So NASA basically has sent a satellite out into this space which is trying to approach the sun. Okay, so its closest approach to the sun would actually be to get past the orbit of Mercury. That is its last point. Okay, it is not going to get into the sun. The closest approach is there, and before reaching there, even today 40% of its equipments have already melted. Okay, it is right now in the journey between Earth and Venus. Okay, it is actually having its transition there. 40% of the equipment have melted. What does this tell us? They are very, very hot, these stars. But because of the absence of medium, this heat cannot be transmitted very efficiently to other things. Understood? So that is why they do not raise the temperature. And subsequently, that is why we do not feel the heat that is actually generated by other stars except for sun. Okay? Except for the sun, you are not going to feel the heat of energy of any other star. Make sense? Okay? So that's the next part about it. Now, another thing that you see in the sky, anyone who has watched the movie Swadesh? Shah Rukh Khan? Any Shah Rukh Khan fan here? Please say yes. Who? Shah Rukh Khan fan? Shah Rukh Khan movies? A seriously tough crowd, man. With respect to, the movie examples that I have, you guys have watched none of the movies. Swadesh is a very nice movie, by the way. Yeah. So in Swadesh there is a song Ye Tara Wo Tara, actually where he explains what exactly a constellation is. Okay. So constellation is basically a group of stars which is in the sky. Okay. So what happens is that the humans, because in the past we did not have anything to do with the New York Stock Exchange or the Iran and Israel war. So what would we do? In the night we would look into the sky, and while looking into the sky we would picturize certain things, we would visualize certain things, and we would find that there are certain stars which are positioned relatively constant with respect to each other. Okay, so what we do? We started imaginary line joining on them. We started making imaginary lines. There nothing is real. This is just a game of human imagination and visualization. And because of that, what happened was that we could find that in the sky we had certain patterns that we could figure out. Okay, of limited number of stars, maybe 8, 10, 12 stars. That thing is actually known as a constellation. Okay, now you may not be watching the movie Swadesh, but I'm pretty sure that you might be knowing your zodiac signs. Okay, tell me your zodiac signs. I'm not going to make any prediction, I just want to know your zodiac signs. Scorpio. Okay, you like the vehicle, or you are a Scorpio? Okay, who is Pisces? Your birthday is approaching, just gone. Okay, happy birthday. Next, Gemini, yours is approaching. Okay, so is mine. Yeah, next, Capricorn. Okay, I don't know when that comes up, but okay, I'm trying to be smart. Yes, Capricorn. Then Leo. Okay, no idea. What time of the month? What time of the month, year do you have your birthday? February. So I think that would be Aquarius. I think so. I'm not very sure. That could be Aquarius. Birthday month? October. Anyone who knows that? Very sorry, I'm not very sure of that. And Mr. Shooter? No idea. When is your birthday? August. I also don't know. Okay, but the point is that all these zodiac signs that you have told me, Leo, Virgo, Pisces, Gemini, all of these, Capricorn, these are all names of these constellations only. Okay, the only reason you know them is because during that part of the year, these are visible in the sky. So during June, May to June, you have Gemini. Okay, during March, we have Pisces. During Feb, I guess that is Aquarius. Okay, I'm very sorry then. That way. So March to Feb to March, that is basically when you have Pisces and Aquarius. That is something like that. Okay, so these are all the names of these constellations. Okay, and these constellations are basically the one which you see in the sky only through your imagination. So that is how your zodiac signs are actually linked to this, and that is why they are known as sun signs, because they are related to your stars. Got it? Everything comes down to geography, don't worry. I'll teach you everything here. Understood? So in the context of India, okay, we had one particular very special constellation that was made out of 7 stars. Okay, those 7 stars in India are actually called as Saptarishi. Okay, 7 great sages of India. So that constellation is known as Saptarishi Mandal. This is basically a Hindi term where there are 7 stars. Okay, and these 7 stars are named after 7 great sages of India. Okay, in the English language, the same constellation is known as the Big Dipper, also known as Ursa Major. So these two are basically the same. This is the English equivalent, Ursa Major. That is the Hindi equivalent, Saptarishi Mandal. Okay, so that is how we have 88 such constellations that have been formally recognized. They have been formally recognized that okay, these are the constellations which are seen throughout the earth by various sky gazers. Okay, now this formal recognition is given by another international body that is known as International Astronomical Union. IAU. Now this is also the same body which has degraded or demoted Pluto from the status of a planet to a dwarf planet. How many planets have you read in the school? 8 or 9? 9. You all have studied 9, but you know that now there are 8 formally recognized planets. This is the culprit. They did it, but there was scientific reason to do it. Okay, and this is what also shows you how dominant as humans we are. We actually are trying to tell nature what is good and what is dwarf. Okay, that is what we are. So International Astronomical Union is an international body of astronomers. Okay, astronomers are those individuals who study the space. Okay, so these astronomers actually have a collective that is known as IAU. So anything that is related to astronomy is officially certified or recognized by them. So they have recognized 88 such constellations in the sky. You might be knowing about another word, Orion. This is also a constellation. It is also the name of a nebula. You'll be reading about nebula as well, don't worry. Okay, so Orion is also a constellation. Understood? The only thing that we have to understand with respect to a constellation is that any two stars which are to be in a constellation will always have the same relative positioning with respect to each other. Okay, just like if I have to take you as the individual stars, so all of you need to have the very same relative position with respect to each other. It should not change. If it changes, it will not be a constellation. So now if I actually draw any kind of, you can say, a line in between all of you, or I give you a rope to pass on and then I try to figure out what kind of shape it is, I can call it a constellation. So what is important? Relative positioning has to be fixed. Understood? So that is constellation for you. Now this Ursa Major or Saptarishi Mandal is very important for navigation purposes. Okay, anyone who has been on a ship, anyone who wanted to be in the merchant navy, Indian Navy? No one? Popeye the Sailor Man? Haven't heard of anything? Popeye the Sailor Man at least? Yeah. So what basically happens is that when you actually are in the seas, okay, so right now we have GPS and Google Maps and everything, but everything works with respect to cities. It will not even work with respect to all the villages in India. Okay, now imagine you are in the ocean. You have to go from India, let us say, to Africa. We want to avoid the entire West Asia right now because we don't want to be hit by another drone. Okay, So if you have to go from India to Asia, Africa, okay, let us say we want to go to Mozambique. So what we are going to do? We know that with respect to India, we have to sail towards the west. But where towards the west? Are you going to draw a straight line that this is Mozambique? No. Mozambique is something which is south of India. So you basically need to navigate towards your south. Okay. So how exactly is it done? It is done using a particular star in the sky that is known as the Polaris or North Star, which you know as the pole star. Okay. So this is basically a star in the night sky which always points towards the North Pole. That is called as Polaris, pole star or North Star. So what basically happens is that the sailors have experience to locate this star in the sky, and based upon that you can determine the north direction. Okay, so once you understand the north direction, then it is only a show of your hands. If this is north, the opposite to it, my back side will be the south. Okay, and my right side will be east, my left would be west. This is how the directions are determined in the sea. Okay, so when the navigation instruments fail, or for that matter, do you know about surgical strikes which happen? You understand special forces, surgical strikes, SEAL Team 6, have you known about that? Anything? You know surgical strikes, right? So in surgical strikes, what happened was that you do not have any kind of radio communication from the headquarters. You have to execute this mission on your own after you have crossed the border. Okay, but after you have crossed the border, how exactly are you going to locate your target? That is something which is done using the pole star, because you determine the directions from there. So almost all the military agencies in the world, whoever operate behind the enemy lines, meaning who operate behind the beyond the borders of that particular country, they are trained in this. Okay, anyone who attended NCC Scout Guides, so you must have been taught that you might be given a map kind of situation, that this is the map, and the map, this is the direction that you have to go. There would be certain objects that you have to remember as landmarks. Okay, that was basically to determine or sharpen your skills for direction. Okay, so that even without the map, you would be able to navigate in the dark. So in the dark, you have only two things: landmarks and North Star. Okay, that is how it is used. So all the trekkers in the world, whoever go for trekking, okay, but they go for trekking through the forests, not the ones who are mountaineers. They basically know this. Okay, so that is the utility of the North Star. We'll be talking about it as well. Understood? Now the next thing, planets and natural satellites. Planets come from a word which in the Greek is called planetai. Okay, this word planetai. So what would happen is that in ancient Greece, people would sit on their floors, or you can say in the markets, that was known as agaro. From there comes the word agriculture. Agaro, market. Okay, so what basically happens is that when you talk about this marketplace, so people would sit down, and there would be people who would start actually fooling other people. Okay, there is an interesting story about Isaac Newton as well, that Isaac Newton, before he discovered gravity, was a con man. He used to con people. Okay, fake astrological predictions, but that story is not true. But it is definitely a true, I mean, a very famous story about Isaac Newton. The point being that when you are sitting in the sky, when you are sitting in the market, you have to do something to earn money. People would start fooling others. Okay, so what they would do, they would say that we are going to play a game of betting. Okay, we are going to observe some of the points in the sky, and if they move in a particular direction, you win. That kind of things. So what these people actually did was that they would observe the sky, and they would look into the way in which certain points moved throughout the night in a span of 1 hour, 2 hours, 3 hours. Okay, and then subsequently what is going to happen, they would understand in which direction are they moving. But the gullible person who's coming to them, you are saying that, okay, if you answer this question correctly, I'll give you 10 rupees. Today 10 rupees is not so much, that time it was way too much. Okay, so that person says, okay, so they would say, look at that point into the sky. Okay, and tell me that in which direction will it move in the next 1 hour or in the next few minutes, whatever it is. Okay, so you're going to take a guess, it will move ahead, backwards, this direction, or that direction. If you win, it's okay, you get 10 rupees. But if you lose, you give 10 rupees. So that is how people would earn money. But at the same time, this is something which actually built up a whole breed of astronomers. Okay, Greek astronomers who would then constantly look into the sky to understand that there are certain points in the sky which move throughout the time. Throughout the night, you would see that their position changes. One of the biggest evidence was moon. Okay, moon also changes its position throughout the night. So that is why they were called as planeti, wanderers, that they wander throughout the night. So that is why they are known as planeti. Now the other thing which then also was expected was that because they are moving, they must be the one which should be made of certain heavy materials. Only then they would be moving in a certain direction. That was an assumption back then. Eventually it was then realized that yes, these are the you can say celestial objects which are made of rocky things. They have hard surfaces or frozen gases. Okay, so planets are basically the ones which have rocks or gases as their surface. Okay, and subsequently what happens, they do not have any source of heat and light. They actually act as coins. Okay, so what happens is that just like you, if you place a coin here, so whatever light is falling on it, you will see its reflection. That is the same thing which happens here. So they act as coins. Whenever light falls on them, it reflects. This also is true for Earth. Okay, so with respect to Earth, we will be reading it as albedo. Okay, but with respect to everything, every single thing on which light falls, some amount of light is reflected. Some is absorbed, some is reflected. That is how you get different colors. That is how we get different complexions. Okay, and that is how we see different you can say wavelengths of light. The sky appears blue. Okay, so some clean water in the ocean appears blue because that is because of the scattering of the light. Okay, that happens due to the scattering of the light. That is the only wavelength that is left out. All the other wavelengths are absorbed. Your hair are usually black because mostly all the light is absorbed by it. So that is why it appears black. Okay, so in this manner what happens is that we all are reflectors of light. Some way or other we reflect it. Okay, we do not have any source of, I mean as humans we do have source of heat and light in the sense that we have sun. But when you talk about planets, they do not have their own heat or source of heat and light. They receive both of them from a nearby star. But yes, they will be heavy enough. They will be massive objects. Okay, and then finally there is something called as a natural satellite. So natural satellite is like a companion. Okay, just like you may have or you will have one companion, it is hoped in the future. Okay, so what basically happens is that you will usually go hand in hand if you are not trying to kill each other. Okay, well, that does happen. I mean, things are really fuzzy these days, so we cannot actually say how things end up. It is like Avengers marrying together. Achha, Avengers actually you know, na? Or you don't even know Avengers as well. So the point being that natural satellites are companions of the planets. Okay, they are gravitationally bound to the planet and they revolve around it. Okay, so you must have seen this in you can say every romantic relationship, there would be one individual who seems to be smarter or stronger, and there would be other individual whose life revolves around this central figure of their life. You all have at least known this even if you have not been in a relationship. That pun is intended for you, mechanical engineer. Okay, so what basically happens that this thing that you are bound with something and your life revolves around it, that is natural satellite. Okay, so regardless of how beautiful your companion is, after some amount of time you start seeing the flaws. That is why we say even in the moon we have spots. Okay, that's the whole point about it. So this is natural satellite. Moon is our natural satellite. There is no limitation of the number of natural satellites that a planet can have. Just like when you talk about Jupiter, even today we are discovering new satellites for Jupiter, new natural satellites. Okay, apart from that we have human made satellites. So human made satellites are human made objects that are intended to revolve around some other celestial object. That could be moon, that could be sun, that could be some other planet as well. Just like you might be knowing about Mangalyaan. You have seen Mission on Mars. What is that movie? Mission Mangal. So Mangalyaan is basically India's satellite to you can say Mars. Okay. We in the same way have Pathfinder. We have Cassini. Okay. We have many more satellites like those. Okay, which are actually dedicated to other you can say planets as well. But these are human made satellites. So these are called as artificial satellites. But they also have the same thing, revolve around the planet or the celestial object for which you are made. Understood? Yes? Yes, yes. Absolutely. It is. You have anything to say on that? Yeah, it is expanding. It is expanding. It will expand. See, all of you understand a little bit about energy. Just imagine that you basically are bursting a cracker. Have you played with a cracker? Okay, or imagine that you have a balloon which is filled with water. If you burst it out, what happens? Whatever is inside it will spread out, and it will spread out till the time it has the energy to move. So the universe current theory which is accepted is basically that it has come out of a single big bang explosion. So as long as we have the energy of that explosion with us, we will keep on expanding. That is a simple explanation to expansion. Okay, we do that. So that is how you see, and this is also one of the conundrums of universe. On one end, I am talking about gravitation. Gravitation is attractive. Things should come together. On the other side, I am also saying that the universe is expanding. So if there is attraction, how are things getting far away? What is this irony? This is something which is known as dark energy. Gravitation is something which we feel every day, because right now you are sitting because of gravitation. Okay, you are only able to sit in these chairs because the chair is actually able to manage your weight. It is able to hold you down there. Now imagine sitting on a bean bag. So when you sit on the bean bag depresses, the sofa depresses when you sit on it. Okay, so what does it do? After depressing, it actually compresses and it makes a surface which is strong enough to bear your weight. Okay, that is why if I sit on a bean bag, the bean bag may not sit on me. Okay, I might be on the floor. That's the case. So what do you understand by that? You see that because of gravity, there is some amount of stopping or attraction that is going to be the case. Okay, but when I talk about expansion, this is opposite of gravity. But this is an energy which we are not able to see yet. So that is why we have named that energy as dark energy. And 67% of the universe volume is composed of dark energy. We are not able to characterize it. We are not able to see it. So that is dark. Understood? So that is basically dark energy and gravity. We'll study of these things in detail. Don't worry. Anything else? Okay. So this is basically the difference between planets and stars. Okay. So planets, as I told you, they basically receive the energy from their nearest star. They do not have any source of energy of their own. But with respect to the star, they have their own source of heat and light. Second thing, with respect to the composition, stars are gaseous. They are made out of hydrogen primarily. That hydrogen turns into helium. That is the primary composition of stars. But when you talk about planets, planets have rocky structure like Earth. Planets may be gaseous like Jupiter. Okay, so both of them are possible here. When you talk about self-illumination, you are going to find that it is something which is there in stars. It is not there in planets. Okay, then when you talk about the orbit, so planets usually orbit a star because it is said that the planets are actually the remnants of what actually forms the star. So that is why the planets usually orbit a star. But when you talk about a star, star does not orbit anything in central or particular. It may move, but it would move as a system with planets. It usually does not orbit anything. Okay. Then with respect to the size, stars are massive, very, very big. Planets do not have any comparison to it. Planets are relatively smaller. Okay, but yet there could be a lot of different varieties of signs. Just like you have Pluto, you have Mars, you have Earth, you have even bigger things like Jupiter. Okay, then temperature, because it has its own source of heat and light, it will be hotter, planets will be colder. Okay, and then subsequently formation is something we'll be seeing in the you can say in the coming slides. Is this understood? No doubts? Okay, take a 5 minutes break, go recharge, rest, come back, we start with the next part. If there's any doubt, let me know. This pace is fine with you guys, or you want me to go a little faster or slower? This is fine, you are able to understand? Okay. Let's begin. Now we talk about galaxy. Okay. So now galaxy is a collection of stars, planets, their natural satellites, asteroids, all kind of rocky fragments, dust particles, gases, all together. Okay, that is actually a galaxy, and there are several galaxies in the universe. Okay, there are a lot of galaxies in the universe. So when you talk about a galaxy, it's usually considered as a collection of stars. But apart from the stars, whatever are the other things, they are also a part of the galaxy. Now galaxy is the place where the stars are born, and it is the place where the stars will die. Okay, so with respect to stars also you have the life cycle. They are born, they are also die. So if you are looking into this particular galaxy, at the center is the place where stars are born. Okay, and as they are born, what happens is that gradually and gradually they start their journey into various positions. Okay, and after billions of years, after their fuel is spent, they have no more fuel for themselves, they die as well. Okay, so that is what is called as galaxy. Now there are various types of galaxies depending upon the shape. Just like if you see this, this is basically a galaxy which looks like a spiral. So the name is a spiral galaxy. Okay, Milky Way is an example of one such galaxy. Some galaxies look like ellipse, oval shaped. Those are called as elliptical galaxies. Some of them do not have a definite geometrical shape. They are known as irregular galaxies. Okay, but there are many galaxies in the universe. Okay, and the final term that we have with respect to universe is universe. Okay, here the word is uni. Uni basically means one. You have heard of uniform? You all had uniform in the school? Uniform, everyone in the same form. So that is why everyone was given the same set of top and bottom, same color, same accessories, same belt, same tie, everything same. Uniform, universe. One large collection of everything in the sky is universe. Okay, that's it. That is universe. So basically you can say that if this tissue box is the universe, every single tissue is a galaxy. Okay, so the universe has everything, all the galaxies, all the stars, all the planets, everything that is imaginable, which is unimaginable, like dark energy, dark matter, they all form a part of universe. Now why exactly is called why is it called as a universe? Because we don't know if there is any other universe that exists. So we know that there is only one because our observation is limited. So we know of only one such large collection, that is what we call as universe. Had it been the case that there were multiple such universes existing, we would call it multiverse. Okay, that would be called as multiverse. That's the concept of universe. Do you understand this? So time for your first video. Okay, I'm going to go for a video for you guys. Ready? This is a video on galaxies. What is a galaxy? Till the 1920s, we only knew of our own galaxy. Do you want the sound to be more? Or is it audible? Audible? Everyone? Even with telescopes, we can barely see little fuzzy spiral shapes in the sky. And we wondered what exactly they were. Dusty nebulas? Or other galaxies entirely? There was a great debate about the issue. Ultimately, Henrietta Swan Leavitt's work on distances to stars enabled Edwin Hubble to prove that the largest fuzzy spiral shape in the sky was actually a galaxy entirely separate from Earth, the Andromeda Galaxy.
discovering and grasping the vastness of space. Since Andromeda, we've learned there are billions more galaxies outside of the Milky Way. Galaxies are concentrations of stars, gas, dust, and dark matter, all held together by gravity. Many galaxies are spiral galaxies, like the Milky Way, but there are also elliptical and irregular galaxies. As far as we know, all large galaxies have a supermassive black hole intersection. We also know that galaxies interact with each other, creating beautiful new forms over millions of years. This is true for Andromeda and the Milky Way, too. Our galaxy is on a collision course with our nearest neighbor. While that may seem violent to you and me, galaxies are so huge that most stars will pass right by each other. Phew! Eventually, the Milky Way and Andromeda will merge into one giant new elliptical galaxy. It's not for another several billion years, but it's sure to be a spectacular show for the stargazers in the distant future.
So this shows to you what exactly is a galaxy. Okay, and what it also tells you is that how this galaxy is the one which is going to collide with other galaxies as well. It tells you how Andromeda, the nearest galaxy to Milky Way, okay, they are going to be colliding in the future. There are a lot of collisions that happen. Okay, galaxies collide, and during this collision, new stars are formed. There is no destruction, there are new stars that are formed. Okay, with respect to climate of the you can say the various planets which are present in the galaxies, that is something which is not determined because there is no life. Okay, life as we know exists on Earth, so that is why we don't know about what happens to the planets, but yes, there is definitely something called as the birth of new stars. Okay, that happens. So that is all about galaxies. Do you have any doubt? Should we go ahead? So now talking about the historical background. Okay, so from the ancient past, just I told you that at that particular moment of time, there were no parties to be attended, no Instagram, WhatsApp, YouTube, where you will be gluing your eyes. So people glued their eyes on the sky in the night. They would observe what happens in the night. Okay, and based upon that, there were two different belief systems that were working. Okay, in the first belief system, it was believed that humans, okay, who live on Earth, is basically the center of the entire universe. So the entire universe revolves around the Earth. This story or this theory is actually called as geocentric theory. Okay, geo basically is the Greek word for Earth. So from there comes geography. Okay, so geo basically is Earth. So when the you can say the philosophers or scholars of the past who believed that Earth is the center of the universe, that is called as the geocentric belief. So there were two things that were actually very difficult or debatable at that particular moment of time. What were these two things? The first thing is that when people would stand at the sea coast, at the seashore, okay, all they could see was a flat end, an abrupt end at the far distance. Okay, so there were a lot of sailors who would actually fear going beyond that thing which is called as horizon. So horizon is basically what you see when you stand on the sea. Okay, so you see a flat straight line and you feel like that is the edge, the tipping part. Okay, so sailors would not dare cross it. That is also one of the underlying beliefs why it was said that Indians, especially the followers of Hinduism, should not go into the seas. Okay, in the past that has been a case that if you actually go into the seas, then you basically are going to give up upon your own practices of being a Hindu. It was not considered to be a good thing. Okay, now this was something which was also challenged with respect to the British Indian Army, because in the British Indian Army a major issue for recruiting you can say the Hindu soldiers was basically that they had a very strict rule that they would not be going into the seas. They would not be fighting the wars of the British in other countries or continents. Okay, now this was something which was then eliminated, that anyone who has this particular belief will not be allowed to be entering or admitted into the army, and gradually that belief was broken. Okay, now the point is that this belief that the earth is actually flat and it is at the tipping point. Okay, so this was something which was broken away by the journey of someone called as Magellan. Okay, so Magellan was basically a sailor who started from Spain. Okay, and he was the first one to complete a full round around the earth. Okay, so that is called as circumnavigation. Circumnavigation basically means that you have traveled the entire earth on one particular means of transport. For him it was a ship. Okay, so Magellan's journey gave us two very important things. Magellan, being the head of this particular expedition, was also a very educated man. So what he would do is that he would keep a diary that would record his journey and his experiences with the date that was there in that particular time. Okay, whatever date system he used to write down a journal entry, just like you like journaling. So that is something he would do. So what happened was that when he actually came back to Spain, first belief that was broken was that the earth is flat. Okay, so it conclusively proved that the earth is round, spherical, ball shaped. Why? Because you could come back to the earth, I mean at the same place after some time. The other thing that was understood was that there is some point on earth where the dates change, because when Magellan came back with his entire diary entry, his diary entry was 1 day older than the date which was there in Spain. Okay, so he could not understand this, that how this error could be made. He counted the number of pages and every page actually described the day of his journey. So from the day he embarked on the journey from Spain till the day he came back, he counted the number of days. The days were constant, but the dates changed. So that was the second observation that came out from this particular expedition. And since then we have a concept of date, that the dates change for two different parts of the earth. Okay, that will be leading in the next chapter. So that's the thing. So this is how we have the breakage of two beliefs. One, that the earth is spherical, that the earth is flat. Instead of that, it was seen that the earth is spherical. That is something which was understood. The second thing was that we had different dates. But now, when you go to the Greek, this was basically the strong belief of the church in the past. So church in the past believed this, that earth is round, okay, but it is motionless, it is static, it is constant at a point, okay, and all the things around move around the earth. So that basically is also an underlying concept, that earth is basically made out of superior beings. Okay, so that is why this belief that it is surrounded by a transparent celestial sphere. That basically means that when you look up, there is nothing that blocks the light. Okay, and everything moves across. That is called as geocentric belief, and this is something which the church also believed. So in the past, when you talk about the Western countries, when you talk about Greece, when you talk about England, you talk about Netherlands, all these countries, they basically had a very strong affinity and influence of church. Okay, church had significantly more power than the king. Okay, and that is why if you are actually crossing the church, it was something which was an act of treason, and many of the scholars in the past have suffered because of this. Do you know Pythagoras? Pythagoras theorem, a square plus b square is equals to c square. Okay, Pythagoras was one such individual. He basically was he was very interested in looking into the sun. Okay, that how exactly the sun is the one around which we revolve. Okay, so Aryabhatta in India. Okay, then you have Pythagoras, you have Aristotle. These were the people who basically said that earth revolves around the sun. We are not a motionless body. So these were the people who said that earth revolves around the sun. So sun is basically the center. Okay, So that is the second belief. Now sun in Greek language is called as Helios. Okay, so there is something called as heliocentric theory. So in the heliocentric theory, what happens is that it is the sun which comes to the center. Now this is what you know as the geocentric theory. The sun, the earth is at the center, and around this you have the moon, you have the sun and other planets and other things. Okay, this is the geocentric theory. Now in the heliocentric theory, this is going to change. The sun is going to come to the center. Now because this was against the belief of the church, so Pythagoras was ordered to be house arrested. Okay, so he was not to be jailed, but he was to be kept under arrest in his own house. Okay, he was allowed to conduct whatever he wanted to do, okay, in the beach, sandy beach that he was in. But the point is that he was not allowed to leave his place. He was not allowed to communicate or write anything. Okay, so one fine day, what happened was that when Pythagoras was actually making an observation with respect to the sun, he was actually looking into a solar eclipse. Okay, so he was trying to make an observation out of it. So the soldier who basically was given the duty to keep him under the arrest, he accidentally stepped over one of the circles that he had made on the sandy beach. So Pythagoras said, please don't step on my circle. That is what he said, and these were his last words. He was immediately beheaded by the soldier. Immediately. Okay, his head fell exactly into that particular circle. So that was the kind of belief of religion at that particular time. You could not dictate the, you can say, the religion at that point of time. So that is why gradually and gradually a lot of other observations were made. Gradually people started, there were greater number of people who started questioning this belief, and then came the heliocentric theory. Okay, so this is basically Aristarchus. Aristarchus basically was the first Greek scholar to propose a heliocentric theory. Okay, this was the first time that the heliocentric theory was proposed in Greece. The name was Aristarchus. And he said that sun was basically the one which was several times bigger than the earth. Okay, and it is more massive, it is stronger than earth. Okay, now the point being that this is something which was also said by Aryabhat. But the point is that the first records that were actually found by the historians were from here. The records of Aryabhat were actually discovered later on. And the other way around, we could not actually carbon date it to great accuracy that who was the first one to give this particular theory. That is why Aryabhat is actually given the credit of three different things. First, a heliocentric theory. Second, existence of pi. Third, the discovery of zero. Okay, but the point is that in what particular time we have his theories coming up, when did he give this particular treatises, that is something which is not conclusively proven. Just like this is something which has been a very great amount of you can say debate with respect to the Indian history. Just like when you talk about the death of Gautam Buddha. Okay, Gautam Buddha, you know. So when did Gautam Buddha die? Now this is something which is an you can say a matter of debate. No one actually knows, and we are not able to find it out conclusively. So that is where the Indian history suffers, because our written records are not being able to properly traced in the past when they were actually written, who wrote them. That is something which has been a difficult thing with India. Okay, so that is why this is what has been believed, that it was Aristarchus who gave the first such notion, because this is something which is recorded in their system. Okay, then the next thing is Eratosthenes. Eratosthenes was the first one to, for the very first time, calculated the circumference or tried to tell how big the earth is. Okay, he was the first one to attempt such a big calculation, but his calculation was based upon the idea of Aryabhat. Okay, so that is basically Eratosthenes. Then we have Ptolemy. How many of you know Alexander the Great? Have you seen have you seen any series on Alexander that is there in Netflix? Now this is one series that you should be seeing. There is a series on Alexander. I tell you the name. I think it is The Making of a God or The Making of Alexander. But this series is something you should be seeing. This series is going to tell you how powerful your mind is. Why do you think is Alexander called the Great? Yeah, because he almost conquered the entire world. At least for that time, the world actually spanned from Europe to Asia. Okay, because this is a contiguous land. The land is geographically joined. So he basically was about to capture India. Okay, where he actually accidentally came. He did not know that we had malaria, and he died of malaria, of course. So that's the thing. Okay, so what basically happened was Alexander's close friend was this guy, Ptolemy. He was Alexander's friend. Okay, so Alexander was known great. He is known as great because he could do things which at that time were believed to be impossible for humans. And you know how he did it? With just one belief, with the thing that his mother told. His mother told him that he was the son of Zeus. So he is a demigod. Okay. He never asked for a validation. Never. He just believed I am the son of Zeus and I cannot be defeated. It doesn't mean he never got defeated. He definitely got defeated. Okay, he got a lot of resistance as well. But the point is that just his belief that I am the son of Zeus, nothing can happen to me, he did things which humans thought were impossible. And that is why he is known as Alexander the Great. So it's all about your mindset. If you believe it very, very clearly and strongly, it doesn't matter. You will do it. You will do it. Okay. So that is why I'm asking you to watch that particular series if you have Netflix. Now, coming to Ptolemy. Ptolemy was a friend of Alexander. He would also, you can say, the commander in chief of his army, Ptolemy. Okay. But Ptolemy also had a very strong inclination towards studying. So he was a very, very, you can say, known cartographer. Wherever he would go, he would draw pictures of places, wherever he went. And that is how he was the first one to give an atlas to the world. Okay, he was the first one to give an atlas to the world. Ptolemy also gave a treatise on astronomy that was known as Almagest. Okay, now this particular treatise, which was actually done after the death of Alexander. Okay, in this particular one, he actually predicted the location of planets and how exactly they moved. So for the very first time, there was one particular calculated or you can say mathematically concluded exercise that was done by Ptolemy. But again, Ptolemy was basically the one who was a very, very strong supporter of the geocentric theory. Very strong supporter. Anyone who would come up with a heliocentric theory, he would be executed. So after the death of Alexander, Ptolemy actually took control of the entire region of Egypt, which was a part of Alexander at that particular time. And you know, Alexander's grave has never been found. This is another one of the mysteries. Alexander's grave has never been found. It is believed that when Alexander passed away while he was going back through Afghanistan, he passed away due to malaria. So his body was taken in possession of Ptolemy and he was buried in Egypt. So there are a lot of cities in from Egypt till Afghanistan which are known as Alexandria. A lot of cities which are known as Alexandria. Okay, and in one such Alexandria which is there in Egypt is where it is believed that there is the grave of Alexander. But still till date it has not been found. The same is the case with Cleopatra. Okay, so these are another mysteries of life. Now, modern astronomy. Modern astronomy comes into picture when the people of Europe are experiencing age of enlightenment. In age of enlightenment, one thing became very, very clear. You are not going to accept anything on face value. You are to question every single thing. The authority of church was challenged not by an individual but by a group. So that is how then comes the you can say the object of modern sciences, modern astronomy, biology, medicine, everything comes now. Before this, everything had a divine connection. From this point onwards, everything has a scientific connection. Okay, so one of the earliest propounders was Galileo Galilei. Although he is known to be one of the most important persons, but the point is he did not invent the telescope. Let me be very clear. It is definitely mentioned in every single textbook that it is the telescope's inventor was Galileo Galilei. It might even be written here, but the point is he did not invent it. It was his mate. His actually he ran a shop of lenses. So the mate, who the person who was a worker for him, he developed the telescope. He developed the telescope. He only modified it. But because he is the boss, inventor of telescope. Okay. But yes, after what he did with the telescope is something which is phenomenal. He actually observed the moons of Jupiter. So that is why the first 4 moons of Jupiter are known as the Galilean moons. Okay, and these Galilean moons also hold the promise of life beyond Earth. Okay, so this particular observation from the telescope was the first one to tell that the moon is not smooth, it is made out of craters. Okay, and the shadow of these craters is what is seen as spots over the moon. Earlier it was believed that there is some kind of you can say evil eye on the moon. Again the same thing, I mean superstition versus reality. But he was the one who observed it, that these are not any kind of evil eye. They are spots, they are craters on the moon. And the shadow, when the sun shines over it, the shadow which is created gives you the spots. Okay, that's the first thing he told. Then the first 4 moons of Jupiter, who basically were the ones which were, you can say, discovered by him, are known as Galilean moons in his respect. Okay, so that is basically the contribution of Galileo. Apart from that, he also proved what Pythagoras was trying to prove. Pythagoras got blind observing this sunspots on the sun. The second person to go blind was Galileo Galilei. Okay, so from this particular experimentation onwards, it was seen that you cannot be looking into the sun through naked eyes. That is why anyone who is interested in watching solar eclipse or lunar eclipse, you are always said that you should be having a dark Polaroid, you can say goggle, before you look into it directly. That is because the radiations from the sun can actually burn your retina. Okay, so that's the thing. This is the first telescope which was used to observe the moons of Jupiter, used by Galileo Galilei. Okay, now comes Nicholas Copernicus, one of the most important elements of modern astronomy, because he was the one who scientifically proved that we have the heliocentric model. We are not a geocentric system. We have the sun at the center, and we have the you can say all the planets, we revolve around the sun. He was the first one to give that particular you can say explanation. Now at the same time, he also gave another you can say theory, that the shape in which we are going to revolve around the sun are actually circular orbits. But now it is known that they are not circular, but they are elliptical orbits, oval shaped orbits. Okay, so that's the thing. And he also said that the rotation of Earth is from west to east. The Earth rotates from west to east. That is the reason why the sun is first seen in the east and it is seen at the end towards the west. Okay, so that is why you know about Japan. Japan is basically known as the land of rising sun. The first country in the world to receive sunlight is Japan. That is why it is called as the land of rising sun. When you go to Norway, that particular country is known as the land of midnight sun. Okay, why? Because in Norway you are going to find that the sun does not settle for 6 months. Even when you are there at 12:30 a.m. in the midnight, you would find it like evening here. It is so illuminated. Okay, and that is the lowest point of the sun. At 1 a.m. in the morning, full sunrise. So the people of Norway find it really difficult to sleep in dark. That is why when they come to India, when they come to other countries, they basically keep their lights on. Okay, their air conditioning is on always because they come from really cold weather. Okay, so just like we are comfortable, we did it at 24 degrees Celsius, they would require 18 or 19 degrees Celsius for a comfortable journey. Okay, so that is Nicholas Copernicus. Now going to Johannes Kepler, or for some of you Johannes Kepler. he basically was the one who gave certain laws about the movement of the planets around the sun. Okay, they are basically known as the Kepler's laws. So he basically further developed Copernicus theory. So that is why this particular heliocentric model of the solar system is also called as the Copernican model. Okay, and based upon that, Johannes Kepler, he gave 3 different laws. The first law was that the movement of planets around the sun. So it was said, according to Nicholas Copernicus, the orbits are circular. Okay, circular basically means that any point on this particular orbit from the sun will be at the same distance. Okay, that is a circle. A circle is a symmetrical figure. Okay, but what Johannes Kepler said was that instead of this, there is a slight bulge. It is elliptical in nature. So the distance of this particular planet from the sun changes very small, in a very small manner, but it does change throughout the year. Okay, so now instead of this, just try compressing it from one of the sides. If you compress it from one of the sides, what is going to happen? This is going to expand. Okay, so instead of this, what you are going to get? You are going to get a figure like this, right? So this is what he said is the actual path of movement. So the orbit is actually elliptical. Okay, that is what was the first law of Kepler. Now the second law of Kepler was that whenever a planet is revolving around the sun, okay, so this is basically the orbit. What is happening is that from the sun, let us say that we have the planet here. Okay, we have the planet here, and then over the year the planet is here at some point of the year. Now what happens is that we see that the center to center distance between the two has changed. Okay, this is the first distance and this is the second distance. Okay, so because of an elliptical orbit, you see that at one point of the you can say figure, you have the planet at its furthest point, and at the other point it is at the nearest point. Okay, so this particular point, this point is known as perihelion. Okay, so perihelion is basically the point on the orbit of a planet where it is nearest to the sun. Okay, the furthest one is basically called as aphelion. Okay, so this is basically the nearest point. Okay, and this is going to be the furthest point. How do you remember this? You have a word called proximity. You know the meaning of proximity? What is proximity? As a general word, what is proximity? Near. Okay, P for proximity, P for perihelion. Okay, or P for partner, partner is always near, P for perihelion. Okay, now you have another word, away, starts with A for away, A for aphelion. Okay, so you can remember it that way, so it will never be confusing to you. Now the second law of Kepler basically says that if we have a line joining, if we have an imaginary line joining the planet to the sun, that line will be called as the radius. Okay, this line, if there is a line that joins the planet to the sun, that line is called the radius. And with respect to the movement of the planet on this orbit, okay, so in a particular time, let us say 1 day, 1 month or 1 year, the amount of area that will be covered by the movement of planet from this point to this point will be equal on all the sides. Okay, so this is point 1, position 1, this is position 2. Okay, now this is position 3 and position 4. So the area which is here, this area and this area will be the same. Okay, the only thing is you are seeing it as a different shape, but the overall area, the quantity is going to be the same. Okay, so this line which joins the center of the earth, center of the planet to the center of the sun, that particular line is going to sweep the same amount of area in same time. That is the second law of Kepler. Okay, you do not need to know this in a very great detail. The third one is basically the one which actually is of some value to us. The third one basically says the time period for the revolution of a planet. Okay, so time period basically means that if it starts from a particular point, what is the time taken by the planet to come back to the same point? Okay, so that is called as the time period. So time period of a planet to revolve around the sun once, okay, has a relationship with its distance from the sun. So here P is basically the time period. Okay, P is basically the time period of revolution. So the square of the time period is directly proportional to the cube of the distance of the planet from the sun. So greater the distance, greater would be the time. Lesser the distance, lesser would be the time. So that is why with respect to Mercury, Mercury takes only 88 days to revolve around the sun. We take 365 days. Okay, Mars takes greater, Jupiter takes even greater time. Why? Because as you go from Earth to Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, they are away from the sun, and because of this what happens, that we have a greater amount of time which is going to be taken for one revolution. So the square of the time period is proportional to the cube of the you can say distance between the planet and the sun. So from this you can draw only one conclusion, and that is a safe conclusion, that the farther a planet is away from the sun, the slower or more the time it will be taking to have that entire you can say revolution completed. Do you understand this? Okay, so that is the third law of Kepler. Any doubts till now? No issues? Okay, so we'll start with gravitation tomorrow. Okay, you are done with the fundamentals. Tomorrow, with the beginning of gravitation, we'll be moving towards the birth of a star. We'll first of all understand how a star is born, what is the life cycle of a star, and then we will be moving on gradually to how universe is formed. So we start from here tomorrow. Okay, if you want to read it, you can read about it. If you don't want to read it, don't worry, I'll tell you. Okay, but you will understand it. That is something that I have confidence upon. Okay, any doubts that you want to ask? Done? Then you are done for the day. I'll see you tomorrow. Happy Holi.